If you've been following this channel for a while, you already know how much I love Guild Wars 2. This game isn't just my comfort MMO, it's my favorite fantasy universe. So when they announced Janthir Wilds, I was cautiously excited. Spears and PvE, homesteads, Mersat lore, a full-on raid. Everything about it felt like ArenaNet was trying to pivot. Small expansion, frequent updates, focused storytelling. It wasn't trying to be End of Dragons, it was trying to be something new. And for a while, it worked. Janthir Wilds gave us some of the best system Guild Wars 2 has ever seen, some of the best maps, some of the best lore, and also some of the worst content pacing, some of the weirdest storytelling decisions, and a finale that left me screaming in the realm of torment. It's the kind of expansion where I loved almost everything in it and still walked away feeling weirdly unsatisfied. So let's talk about it. The patch cycle, the community meltdowns, the spears, the silence, the Titan reveal that had me losing my mind. This is my review of Janthir Wilds, Guild Wars 2's most beautiful mess. Janthir Wilds was never trying to be the next Path of Fire. From the very beginning, ArenaNet was clear. This expansion was part of their new model. Smaller expansions released yearly with frequent updates instead of one big drop. And Janthir was the second test of that strategy, right after Secrets of the Obscure. If Soto was the prototype, Janthir was the version where they said, okay, now let's actually build something with momentum. And on paper, that premise was sick. You're sent on a diplomatic mission to the Isles of Janthir, this mysterious fog-covered region steeped in ancient magic, guarded by the lowland Coden, and haunted by the long-lost remnants of Mersat civilization. There's a curse brewing in the mist. The Astral Ward is hiding something, and your job is to get to the bottom of it before all of Tyria breaks open. It sounded like Guild Wars 2 meets cosmic horror meets spiritual sequel to Eye of the North, which, hello, I'm obsessed. The marketing leaned hard into mystery. Dev blogs talked about ancient truths and hidden dangers. There was a teaser of a golden spear slamming into the ground like it was Excalibur. We saw lowland Coden in gorgeous autumnal forests. Homesteads looked like a cozy crossover between Skyrim and Animal Crossing, and when the expansion finally launched, it brought with it a stack of new toys. Spears on land. And yes, that is plural, because every single class got one. Some of them stayed, some of them flopped, but all of them were different. Homesteads, which is player housing that is fully customizable, fully account-wide, and fully adorable. The Warclaw amount is now in PvE, which ended up changing how we think about group content entirely, and a full new raid wing, legendary spear, and a complete story arc to be delivered over 4 patches. It wasn't meant to be massive, it was meant to be manageable, bite-sized, consistent, and in a way, that promise did come true. The expansion didn't have the huge gaps between patches, it didn't leave us hanging for a full year, it actually delivered on time, 4 times in a row, which is kind of wild for modern MMOs. But here's the thing, just because something arrives on time doesn't mean it arrived finished, and Janthir Wilds, for all its ambition, launched feeling half-baked. The intro was short, the maps were gorgeous, but sparsely populated, and while the systems were exciting, the story didn't feel like it had room to breathe. What we got was a beginning that intrigued me, a middle that almost lost me, and a finale that desperately wanted to stick the landing, but didn't. Okay, so the expansion launched in August, and it's weird because the first impression, gorgeous. Lowland Shore and Janthir Century are some of the prettiest maps ArenaNet has ever made. Soft fog over piney cliffs, quiet lakes, moss-covered ruins. Visually, it's stunning, and the tone, way more subdued. It feels like a return to Guild Wars 1 storytelling. Quiet, mystery, no overexposure, just a world asking you to explore. For a second, I really believed this expansion might be something special. But then came the pacing, or rather, the lack of it. The launch story dropped in 2 halves, and the second part didn't arrive for weeks. That absolutely killed the momentum. Instead of a tight, exciting intro, we got half a narrative and left everyone asking, that's it? Combined that with the fact that most players finished the content in a day or 2, and suddenly all that launch hype just fizzled. You have beautiful zones and compelling ideas, but nothing to push the story forward. It felt incomplete. Then came Godspawn in November. We got a new raid and a legendary spear, both genuinely good. The raid was intense, challenging, and dripping in lore. We got new convergences, which were open world events based on raid bosses. And the whole thing had this eerie, ancient energy that tied into Titan worship and divine experiments. But that was all instance. If you didn't do raids or striked, there was basically nothing here for you. No new map, no story content, nothing to explore. It felt like ArenaNet served us a really tasty snack while forgetting to cook dinner. By that point, the community was restless. Even I stepped away for a bit. But then came Repetence in March, and it pulled me right back in. Mistborn Barrens might be my favorite zone in the entire expansion. It's haunting and vertical, with layers of forgotten ruins and corrupted magic. The meta was actually intense. You're fighting through failed Mersat experiments and unraveling pieces of lore that go all the way back to Guild Wars 1. It's where the expansion finally felt like it was hitting its stride. The patch wasn't just good for an update, it was just good, period. The story took a darker turn, the stakes felt real, and the mystery surrounding Bava Nissos started to crack open. I remember walking through that ruined canyon and thinking, oh my god, they're actually doing it. The pacing improved, the vibe shifted from uncertain to confident. ArenaNet had something here, and for the first time since launch, I believe we were building to something massive. And then came Absolution, the final update, the finale. And oh my god, I wanted to love it. There was so much working in its favor. The final map was beautiful. The legendary backpack was actually interactive and lore connected. The new fractal kinfall might be the best one in the game. The quality of life changes were everything I'd been waiting for. It should have been a slam dunk. And for a few hours, it kind of was. But then the story. Oh god, the story. We finally make it into the realm of torment. The Mersat mystery is reaching a climax. Titans are leaking into Tyria, the tension is building like crazy, and then the game just stops. Bava Nissos, the literal titan that the final map is built on, is treated like a background furniture. There's no boss fight, no real conversation, no twist, nothing. It's one of the coolest ideas ArenaNet has ever dropped, and they do absolutely nothing with it. And the actual boss, Yura, forgettable. I had to check my footage to even remember her name. The ending felt like a deadline got slapped onto a half-written script. There's no emotional payoff, no big decision, no catharsis. It ends in a whimper, not a bang. Just like Soto, it builds and then stops like it hit a wall. I sat there staring at the credits like, wait, that's it? And the worst part is, it didn't have to be this way. Absolution had everything it needed. The world was in place, the lore was incredible, the characters were getting interesting, but it tripped at the finish line, just like the last expansion did. And it sucks to say that, because I love this game, I love this world, and I wanted Janthir Wilds to break the cycle. Instead, it gave us one of the most beautiful expansions we've ever had, and one of the most frustrating. Let's talk about what actually changed the game, because for all its flaws, Janthir Wilds wasn't just filler. It did things no other Guild Wars 2 expansion has done, and it's already shaping how the future of the game will look. First, land spears. These weren't just a gimmick, they completely redefined the PvE meta. Suddenly builds had range, burst, and flexibility. Spear Renegade, straight up broken. Spear Guardian, a new favorite for open world. Not every class led a clean. Necro Spear, bless its heart, still feels like a stick with ideas, but overall, this was the kind of class shakeup we hadn't seen since Elite Specs launched. And then there's housing. Homesteads weren't perfect, but they mattered. Finally, a space that was mine, fully account-wide, customizable, full of gathering nodes and little cosmetic unlocks that actually made me want to log in. I didn't just play Guild Wars, I lived in it again, and I'm not gonna lie, I spent hours decorating that place like it was a full-time job. Endgame content got a boost too. We got an actual new raid, which, by the way, is the first one in literal years, and it was good. Convergences are chaotic and weird, but they did get people talking. They brought raid mechanics to the open world in a way that's made even casual players feel like they were part of something epic. And Kinfall, the final fractal, gorgeous, emotional, and mechanically tight. It's the kind of content I wish we got more often. And let's not ignore the quality of life changes, because ArenaNet listened. The June patch fixed so much stuff. Inventory cleanups, research note consolidation, new portal tomes, better filters. It felt like a long overdue deep breath. All the annoying little things that chipped away at playtime were gone. I felt like I had actual control over my account again. But above all, the lore is what stuck with me. This was the best Guild Wars 2 storytelling we've had in years. From deep dives into the Mersat and their broken rituals, to the White Mantle, to the resurfacing of Titan lore, to just how creepy and ethereal the Mistborn Barrens were. It finally felt like the game remembered had history. Janthir wasn't just a backdrop, it was a mystery, a curse, and a lesson. Even when the story pacing let me down, the actual world building never did. Bava Nissos was visually unreal. The journals in the Barrens were devastating. The VO snippets in the raids and fractals were haunting. You could feel the dev team reaching back into Guild Wars 1 and saying, remember this? Remember what this used to mean? The Mersat weren't just generic villains anymore. They were victims, zealots, cautionary tales. Their arrogance and trauma bled into every zone. And the Titans? They were no longer just fire monsters from the past. They became part of a bigger mythos about corruption, sacrifice, and what happens when you try to ascend too far beyond your station. This wasn't just nostalgia bait, it was history finally catching up to us. And I have to say it again, these maps were stunning. Lowland Shore, Janthir Sentry, Mistburned Barrens, and Bava-Nissos are some of the most beautiful zones ArenaNet has ever designed. Lowland was cozy and warm. Sentry was eerie and majestic. Barrens felt like cursed archaeology, and Bava-Nissos a literal tightened, a living world with veins and breath and scale that made me feel tiny. Even when the story fumbled, the setting was doing emotional heavy lifting. The world was alive, and it never stopped whispering, even when the plot lost its voice. Janthir Wilds wasn't a perfect expansion, but it was a meaningful one. It brought in new systems, gave players a home, added a raid, and reminded me why I love this universe. It didn't always hit the mark, especially in how it handled pacing and payoff, but it took risks. I tried to merge gameplay innovation with deep lore, and even if the execution was shaky, the intention behind it felt sincere. That alone puts it miles ahead of a safe, forgettable expansion. Sure, the finale stumbled, but I'll be thinking about the build-up, the lore, the Mistburned Barrens meta, and that reveal about Bava-Nissos for years. There was a stretch in the middle where it felt like everything was clicking, like ArenaNet remembered what made Guild Wars special, and that spark, it's still there. If you're a Guild Wars 2 lore nerd like me, you've probably felt the same. Janthir Wilds gave us some of the most creative storytelling Guild Wars has ever seen. It just needed a bit more time to finish what it started. It wasn't the comeback arc I wanted, but it was an expansion that tried to mean something, and that's rare. Final score, 7.5 out of 10. Beautiful ideas, it just needed a better ending.